Okay, we are ready to start. Uh, First of all, I'd like to say greetings and welcome to Psi Omega Chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated's 2021 Virtual CAP Kickoff Meeting. My name is Lugester Fontenot, and I am the president of Psi Omega. We are delighted to have you join us on this beautiful Saturday morning. And on another note, hope you've stopped shaking from the little earthquake we had this morning. I would like to start off out by giving you an overview of who we are and what we do in the community. Psi Omega Chapter was founded in October of 1993 as the first chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha in Alaska. We are committed to serving Alaska communities by implementing our international programs of service that we focus on supporting and sustaining our HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, women's health care and wellness, building an economic legacy, the arts, and global impact. Our signature program, hashtag CAP, engages high school students in the effort to enter college by helping them with their college admissions process. Additionally, we provide college scholarships to graduating seniors each year to help them on their academic journeys. Again, thank you for joining us, and I will now turn it over to the Vice President and the CAP's chairwoman, Lynette Ampadu. Sorry.
Thank you, President Lou Jester, for that welcoming greeting. As we get started, I just want to start off by introducing myself, and I want to ask all the members of Psi Omega to unmute themselves, and we'll start with Portia to introduce herself. And I would like for members to identify their role in the CAP program, or if they're only going to be a mentor, also identify that. So my name is Lynette Ampadu. I am the CAP chairwoman for this program. I will serve as a mentor, and I'll also serve in capacity helping students who are looking to research PWIs versus HBCUs. So PWIs are predominantly white institutions. So that will be my role in the CAP program. I will now turn it over to our next member, Portia Grant.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. My name is Portia Grant. I will be serving on the CAP program as a mentor, as well as assisting all high school students with the financial aid portion. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me or Lynette Ampadu. Thank you.
We'll now turn it over to Angela Hunter.
Good morning, and my name is Angela Hunter, and I serve as the chapter's chaplain. And so I am committed to providing spiritual support, keeping things harmonious, and just promoting spirituality in the chapter. On the CAP, I'm a helper. So wherever this program needs help, there I be. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. We're going to turn it over now to Dr. Kimberlyn Ard.
Good morning. Sorry about that. I'm Dr. Kimberlyn Ard, and I serve as the Ivy Leaf reporter in Psi Omega. I will serve on this in this forum as a mentor and also helping you with your college admissions essays. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ard. At this time, we're going to ask Imani Dickerson to introduce herself and her role.
Hello, my name is Imani Dickerson. I'm a member of Psi Omega Sorority, and I'm here to assist in any way that I possibly can.
Thank you, Imani. And we want to have Aisha Jones introduce herself, and then we'll turn it over to our parents and our students to introduce themselves. Okay, we're gonna move over to Soroya Porsche.
Good morning, everyone. I am Sorority Porsche, a member of Psi Omega Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and I am offering myself as a mentor during this program.
Thank you, Soroya. And I see we have Maya Dickerson. I would like to ask her to introduce herself and just tell us a little bit more about her and the reason why she's joining us on today.
You said my name? Yes.
Yes.
I'm Maya Dickerson. I'm 17 and I'm going to be a senior next year. And my stepmom recommended me to just listen in on this and get information.
Well, thank you for joining us. And I'm so excited that you have someone that mentored you and guided you in the right place. So I'm going to start off by just telling you a little about the CAP program. The CAP program stands for College Admissions Process. And what we do with this program is we introduce high school seniors and juniors to a platform that can help them with their portfolios. We're also providing them with opportunities to assist them with preparing college admission essays. We're going to have platforms that will help students create portfolios, apply for financial aid. We want to assist the parents and constantly encourage them and guide them in the right directions to lead their high school juniors and seniors so they can be admitted into college. So that's our goals. Our goal is to also introduce students who haven't heard of HBCUs before. Let them understand that we have a ton of HBCUs out there in different states that can provide them with many opportunities. And so that's another goal that we are going to provide a lot of our high school students and juniors in this platform. And we do have a guest speaker with us. Her name is Dr. Christy Murray. I will be introducing her later, but I wanted to just let you all know that we do have a guest speaker with us, and I'll go through her bio later. But what I wanted to also let you know is for all of our students and our parents, you receive an email with a CAP toolkit. And within your toolkit, there was an application. And within that application, we want to ask that all parents and students look over the application. If there are any questions, feel free to reach out to us via email so we can walk you through that process of how to complete that application. I want to pull the application up on the screen so we can just take a look at it together. And so I wanted to let you guys know that before we had COVID-19, we would do our program in a setting where we would all meet together. So some of this information may sound intrusive, but if we were all meeting together, we would need your parents' consent. We would need to know who your parents are, your name, your emergency contact. So that's why we're asking for that information. Also, we're asking for your career interest. And the reason why we're asking for this information is, for an example, I work in the accounting industry, the regulation industry, and the compliance industry. So if any of our students wanted to go into that field, I would be better suited to match up with that student so that I can serve as their mentor. So if you're interested in working in communications or education or in the health and science industry or the engineering industry, we want to know that so we can better suit you with a mentor that will meet your needs. We want to know what high school you go to. We want to know your GPA, because a lot of our application for scholarships will want you to have a minimum GPA over 2.5 or a 3.0. So we want to be able to know where you stand so we can better suit you to reach your goals. And if it's your birthday, we want to be able to say, hey, happy birthday to you. We want to know how old you are to see what requirements you fit in with certain qualifications and eligibilities for scholarships and certain grants. And this program is designed for high school seniors and high school juniors. So if you happen to be a freshman or a sophomore, this program isn't specifically designed for you, but doesn't mean we cannot help you in different ways. And again, in order to be a part of this program, there are parental consents required. So we ask that parents work through each one of these statements with their child to make sure that they're going to be able to commit to the program. And we ask that you sign it and date it and return it back to us. We do have a student code of conduct and responsibility contract because we can't do this alone. This program cannot be successful without student commitment and parent involvement. And so we want to make sure that everyone is aware of what those requirements are as well. And we do have a pre and post assessment form. So before we start our program, we want to ask that the students work with their parents to complete the pre-assessment. And we ask for this information because we want to know where you are now. So there may be many of you who don't know any information about how to apply for college, scholarships, financial aid. So by us having that information before we begin, we know where we can better serve you. And the rest of the toolkit that we provide you with is information of how to prepare for college as a senior and as a junior. It kind of gives you tips on how to prepare for the ACT and SAT. And it also gives you more information about different deadlines. So that's what the rest of the package is about. So I know you guys received it last week and some of you received it this week. So as you go through the package, if you have any questions, please, again, do not reach out. Please do not hesitate to reach out to myself and any other members who you met today or who have invited you for today. So at this time, we're going to go into introducing our guest speaker. So our guest speaker for today is Dr. Christy Chambliss-Murray. She is a national speaker, published author, and executive of Invest in Others, LLC, an educational consulting firm. She has over 27 years of expertise in education, college consulting, engineering, business, strategic planning, leadership development, strategic communications, and many more. Dr. Murray earned a bachelor's degree of science in electrical engineering from Hampton University, a master's of science degree in computer information systems from the University of Phoenix, a master's degree in business administration from Strayer University, and a doctorate in business administration from the University of Phoenix. She is also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated for 23 years. She is currently a member of the Psi Omega Chapter, serving the Stafford and Fauquier counties. After getting accepted into college and receiving numerous scholarships, Dr. Murray dedicated her life to helping others do the same. After speaking to thousands of parents, scholars, and others at national conferences, workshops, seminars, and webinars, Dr. Murray recognized the need to develop resources with impactful information for those who are trying to get accepted into college and graduate debt-free. Therefore, she published 2 books, not one, but 2 books. And she also published student workbooks titled College Planning Strategies I Wish Someone Had Told Me and College Funding Strategies I Wish Someone Had Told Me. She did this to provide needed strategies and information that we wish someone had told us. So at this time, join me and welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Christy Murray.
All right, thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. And I am excited to be able to join you today to talk about college planning strategies to help you through the whole admissions process to make it easy and straightforward for you. I want to give you a little bit, I like to use a little storytelling mode with this particular talk. Back in 1993, I was a high school senior. I was the youngest of 3 girls. I have a set of older twin sisters who were already in college. So my senior year, I went to do all these college visits, went to Hampton University, fell in love with the campus. And I came back home and I told my parents, hey, I know where I want to go to school. I want to go to Hampton and I want to major in engineering. My mom said, well, that's great, but you know, Hampton's a private school. So unless we find some more scholarship money, you're probably going to need to pick a in-state public school, which is a lot more affordable. That's not what I wanted to do. So I knew that I needed to roll up my sleeves, be willing to work to try to find some money. Well, one day I'm sitting in the auditorium at my high school and the school counselor comes and pulls me out. And she says, hey, I remember you telling me that you wanted to go to Hampton and you wanted to major in engineering. What if I told you I just ran across a scholarship that they're looking for a student to do both? I said, well, I'm interested. And she says, do you think you can get the application ready ASAP? And I said, sure. She said, because it has to be postmarked by tomorrow. Now, paint the scene. 1993, before the internet, your application literally would have to be printed out, filled out, typed, whatever, and then put in the mail. It has to be postmarked at the post office. She said, can you make that happen? I said, absolutely. And I asked her, I said, can you get my transcripts out that quick? And so she looked at me and she understood what I meant by that, because sometimes it takes a little bit longer than that for schools. And she said, well, make sure your transcript is postmarked as well. I went home, and because I watched my parents do this with my sisters, I had a stack for essays. I had a stack of letters of recommendation. I had some sample applications I could pull all this information from. I got that packaged together, got it sent off. A couple weeks later, I get a message back saying, you have been selected to come in for an interview. And I said, well, great. I didn't realize I had to interview for this particular scholarship, but okay. So I went to the library, didn't have the internet, couldn't Google it, checked out a book about your first interview, followed those steps, went to the interview, knocked it out. They called me back for a second interview. Needless to say, I ended up getting the scholarship. Super excited. I didn't have the highest high school GPA. I had a 3.6. I wasn't the valedictorian. But after I went to that second interview, they called me that same day and said, congratulations, you were accepted. Fast forward on my high school my graduation date, they made all of us stand up individually, and they actually publicized how many scholarships we received. I had the most scholarships, but the highest dollar amount total scholarships from any female in my senior class, including the valedictorian. And so people were calling me up and asking me, well, how did you do it? What did you do? What was your process? One, I had help. But 2, I had a system to make me to be able to execute quickly when the deadlines and the timelines weren't on my side. Now, as you can see here, I actually did go to the Hampton University and did get my undergraduate degree in electrical engineering, and I'm a lifelong student. So I continue to help other students. But one of the things I learned from that experience is somebody helped me. And so I've always been passionate about reaching back and helping others too. And that is the reason why I wrote those books. And that is the reason why I continue to work with students and families every day. Let's see if I can work this. Now, here's the other reason why I do it. Senior. He's a scholar athlete, played football, basketball. He's actually, he just finished applying to 13 colleges, and he just received a Division I football scholarship. So you'll hear me reference them a bit in my talk. But I brought up this slide because I think it's important for you all to know that I'm not just talking it. It's a lived experience for me, and I am a parent going through the same things that your parents are likely to be going through with you. So what I want to talk to you about today, I want to talk about your whole planning process. We're going to do a little bit of where are you now assessment. We're going to talk about your college plan. I'm going to share some best practices with you. We're going to talk about the different type of colleges. How do you choose a major and a college? We're going to talk about the different parts of a college application and how to apply for financial aid and scholarships. And then and I usually have an evaluation, but I don't think we'll have that here. But then we'll do Q&A if there's time for me to be able to answer your questions. I would say that at any point during this talk, if you have questions, put your questions in the chat. I'm happy to try to answer some of them as I am sharing with you today, because it may be very relevant to the conversation. So I do want to make this interactive. I know it's difficult in a virtual environment, but we'll see how we can make that happen. So in the first book that Lynette mentioned, my college planning book, it's that green book you saw. It introduces 10 strategies on how to get accepted into college. And that's where I really want to focus today. So these 10 strategies you see here, you're going to hear me touch on them in some degree, as much, in the time window that we have available. But first things first, I want to know a little bit about you, and I want you to start thinking about your current situation. And I start off in the book, and I start off most of my talks with students and parents with this assessment. It's a where are you now assessment, and there's 10 little simple questions, and we're going to use the chat to answer just a couple of them. We're going to go through all 10. We're going to use the chat, and I want your feedback on a few of them. First question, what is your child's, or if you're a student, what's your current or cumulative grade point average? So in the chat, if you are in high school and you're attending and you know your GPA, or if you're a parent, if you know your child's GPA, just send me a simple yes in the chat, yes or no. I don't need to know what your grade point average. I know that's a little private, but you just send me a quick yes or no if you know your current grade point average. Number 2, all right, Maya says yes, she does. Number 2, true or false? Only students with a high grade point average get scholarships. I'll tell you now, the answer is false. And in my talk, I'll tell you more why I say that. Number 3, what is your school counselor's name? Do you know your school counselor? Who helps you when you have career planning, college planning activities, if you want to know different processes? And if you don't know their name, I would encourage you to develop a rapport and a relationship early, early and often as you can. And as you can tell, good, somebody said they know theirs. Excellent, I like hearing that. Because here's why. In my personal story, who was it who put me in contact with that scholarship? It was my school counselor. If I didn't give her a tell and say, here's what I want to do, you should tell people in your family, community, anybody you come in contact with, what your plans are so they can figure out how to help you. You never know who they're connected to. Number 4, what's the process for obtaining your high school transcripts? If you don't know how to get your transcripts, please find out ASAP. Even in my personal story, you know why I asked my school counselor, can you get my transcript out that quick? Because I knew their process was not a 24-hour turnaround process. And any other time, they would have been the reason why I didn't get my scholarship, because all these steps they have to take. The value is knowing what those steps are and getting ahead of them long before you have a deadline. Number 5, true or false? And I want you to put your response to this one in the chat. The best time to apply for college is in the spring of your senior year. True or false? Any brave souls? All right, nobody wants, okay, Ramona, thank you. The answer is false. You're absolutely right, Ramona. The answer is not, you don't want to wait till the spring of your senior year. And I'll share more why, but I'll tell you simply put, most colleges, once you apply, you want to know if you got in early and how much you're going to get in financial aid so you can spend the rest of your senior year looking for money. Most colleges give out their financial aid on a first come, first served basis. So if you wait until the spring, you're likely not, you won't be in the pool to be able to get access to some of the good financial aid money they have available, because it's all gone. And I don't care what your GPA is. If you wait too late, you're still going to miss out. Number 6, what are your top 3 college and universities choices? Do you know what those things are you want to major in? What are your top 3 college majors? Do you know what you want to major in? Do you know what universities you want to go to? Number 8, true or false? Most colleges and universities prefer the SAT over the ACT. I'll tell you the answer is false. Most colleges accept either or both of them. Some areas are more predominant to take one test versus the other, but most colleges will accept those. And I know during this COVID pandemic time, many colleges are going test optional, where they're admitting students who hasn't had an opportunity to take it, or who may defer not to take it this year or last year and this year. So you may see some of that too. Number 9, true or false? Average grades, and I want you to put the answer to this one in the chat. average grades in hard classes are better than A's in easy classes. True or false? So I will tell you now, the answer is true. Thank you. Here's why. Colleges, scholarship entities, you name it, they want to see students challenge themselves. They want to see that you made an effort to take harder classes, push yourself, develop new study habits, and learn new things about yourself. They want to see that through your academic performance and your academic records. So don't be like my son, my oldest, who's now in college. He talked me into letting him take film study. Why? He wasn't even trying to major in anything in the arts, theater, nothing. He just thought, oh, that'd be an easy A, easy class. Well, against my better judgment, and this is how I know to tell you to not do that, he took it and he still didn't get an A. I'm like, how are you getting an A and what was supposed a C and what was supposed to be an easy class? So definitely you want to challenge yourselves as much as possible. But if you find yourself struggling, I will pull that back some because you still want to manage your GPA so that it works to your advantage. And then lastly, number 10, I want your response in the chat on this one. True or false? Social media accounts and your online reputation does not matter. Nobody cares. All right, somebody said false. Great. I'm seeing a lot of falses. Thank you, Maya. Thank you, Ramona, Lynette. Thank you all. The answer is false. Here's why. You have to think of your social media accounts as information once you put out there, you can't get it back. And I tell students often, and actually adults, you have to manage your own personal brand at all times. And by brand, I mean how you show up in person, how you show up on paper, and how you show up online. And you control the narrative of when people Google you, et cetera, what will they learn about you? School, college officials, especially those who are working in admissions, will go out and Google students. Some scholarship entities, some jobs even, will start to Google people to see what shows up. I've seen students get denied scholarships because they were posting racist remarks or withheld attendance, admissions to a school because of other inappropriate behavior they were exhibiting. And so I'm very careful about that one. And I know you guys are living in a different time than I did when I was in high school. And so now we have to have relevant conversations about those things. So you really want to be careful what you put out there. Now, this assessment you just took is really designed to get you to thinking about where you are. If you don't know your grade point average, you don't know your school counselor, you don't even know how to get your transcripts, then you have a little work to do as you start to think about graduating from high school and what's going to happen, what do you decide to do beyond that? And one of the earlier things that I talk about in my book and in what I share, have a plan. Don't just be fumbling around here like the blind leading the blind. Have a plan around what it is you're trying to execute. It does not have to be complicated. In fact, I would encourage your plan to be simple but effective. You will need a goal. You specify the type of item it is, whether it's your profile, something related to college, maybe it's a test, maybe it's scholarships, whatever. And then the column for the cost. While this might not be important to the students, as a parent, I'll tell you the cost is very important to me because I'm likely the one who's going to have to help or fund most of those things. So I think it's important for you to have an appreciation and respect for the things that have to get accomplished, have a cost value to them at times. Now, my son, on his list like this, he had applied to 13 colleges. Guess how much I paid in college application fees? Close to $950, almost $1,000 on those 13 schools I talked about. So what helped me so that I could get my mind around it is he had it listed here on his plan with an average cost. It doesn't have to be exact. If you can go out and research those schools and you can total it up, even better. But estimate some of the costs if you don't know for sure. Have a start time, a finish time, and then also specify, give yourself credit when you start to make progress. Oh, I'm 25% complete with that goal. Oh, I'm 100%. Oh, look, I haven't even started on number 5 yet. So let me make some traction. So this is what I mean by a simple plan. You and your parents, you can share it. My son had his plan posted on the wall in my office at home, and we would go through and he would even check it off. So he had a better sense of pride when he realized he was making some pretty good progress. So as you have a plan, I also want to encourage you to be mindful of some of the timelines associated with your plan. And I know the CAP application has timelines, and the good thing is some of the same things the CAP application that Lynette mentioned earlier are also on mine. But then I have some other unique things I think you should consider too. Now in the chat, if you can tell me, students, what grade you're in, I think that'll help me as we chat this afternoon, or for you guys this morning. I'm on the East Coast in Virginia, so it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon for me. So let me know what grade you're in. I will say for juniors, in my book, I have timelines for 8th graders all the way up through seniors. But for this presentation, I focused on juniors and seniors. So for those juniors, juniors and seniors, you should be keeping your grades up. But if you're a junior and going to be a rising senior, like I heard someone mention, I think it was Maya mentioned earlier, then I certainly think you should be fine tuning, making sure you understand all the graduation requirements and make sure you're close to meeting them, and your senior grades and courses will complete that for you. Keep your grades up, make sure you know your transcript process, stay involved in activities. I know it's been difficult with COVID, so as much as you're able to still volunteer or participate in sports. I know my son's football team just started last week when they normally play in the fall, but he was still able to get some school-related sports in as he's able to, and the same with you. Narrow down your college majors. You should really, really be thinking about what it is you want to major in. I'm still waiting on you guys' grades over in the chat, by the way. But please think about what you want to major in. Start researching colleges and visiting colleges and different programs. And then I'm going to talk more about this updating your scholar profile, but it's like a one-page resume. Thank you, Kimar. You're a junior. Okay, good. So this is definitely applicable to you. And if you have an opportunity, and I'll talk about this more, take both the SAT and ACT. Outside of a COVID environment, I encourage my students to take both tests, see which one you tested the best at naturally, then do some additional prep work around that SAT or ACT test. And then immediately after you finish prepping, go take it again. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Also, start researching for financial assistance and financial aid and scholarships. And start identifying who can write letters of recommendation for you. How many of you know, if you're a junior, senior, teachers from your 9th grade year on to where you are currently who would be absolutely thrilled to write a letter? Tap into that. And then also for the last two check boxes, these are for athletes. And I had 2 student athletes in my family. So I think it's important for me to at least mention that if you're thinking about playing collegiate sports, you really need to visit the NCAA eligibility's website and make sure you understand what it takes to become eligible to play collegiate sports. Because you can't just wait till your senior year and not meet their requirements and wonder why it's much more difficult for you. And I have a whole chapter in the book that talks about that if you're an athlete. All right, so if you are a senior, we've already established that you should not be waiting till the spring to apply to school. So we're gonna make the assumption that if there are any seniors on, that they have already applied to school, just like my son, he's checked that box, he's applied to all 13 I mentioned. He understands already how to get his transcripts, he's written his college essays, and he updated his scholar profile, and he's already gotten letters of recommendation. That's why I didn't turn those green. Those are things at this point seniors should already be in the works with or already completed. But they should be, because they have applied to colleges, they should be tracking their college results, which colleges accepted you, which colleges may have put you on a wait list or just flat out told you no. You should be looking for scholarships and tracking your results. Seniors should also be completing the free application for federal student aid. If you have any hopes of getting federal financial aid, you need to take this step. And you should be receiving those acceptance letters and financial aid award letters after you do the FAFSA. And that'll tell you how much aid the universities are likely to award you. And if there's a shortfall, then you need to be thinking about what do you do next with that. And lastly, for seniors, you should be making a decision on which school you're gonna go to, paying the deposits and any dorm housing fees that may be required. Now, my high school senior, he had applied to over 20, no, not my high school senior, my college sophomore. He had applied to over 20 schools a couple years ago. And he got till about March or April, and I kept saying, pick a school, which school are you gonna go to? And he kept dragging his feet. He's drug his feet out to probably the end of May. Now he's graduating in June. And I said, okay. So he didn't have any dormitory choices left. It was only one dorm left. And guess what? It was the dorm nobody wanted. So we showed up to campus in August, and he gets out with all his bags and he's looking at the outside. I'm like, why? He's like, why am I seeing those window air conditioners in the window? Mom, where am I? And I'm chuckling because he had delayed so much. He was in the worst dorm. And when he got up to his floor and he realized that he had to share a community bathroom with all the men on his floor, I thought he was going to come back home in the trunk with me. But I made him stay. He was like, I said, well, you know what? Let this be a lesson and not waiting to the last minute. So with this, I'll say, as you think about all these steps with using your time wisely in this timeline, you should be adding those to your plan, using those timelines to drive what you put on your college plan. Now, you've heard me mention several times that you should have a scholar profile. You're probably, what is that? It's a one-page resume-like document. And this is what I used years ago with my niece who ended up going to school on a scholarship. But I added this to her package. She used it for scholarship applications. She used it for college applications. She used it to help her write her essays, and she used it for letters of recommendation. She could give it to a recommender and they knew exactly what to write about her. It's like, oh, I didn't know Christy was in the National Honor Society or volunteered with the American Red Cross. And so they were able to write a more robust letter. But it is a one-page resume. You can include a picture or not. It would have your name and contact information, your objective, and it's just a simple one-sentence statement that says, I, desire to attend Hampton University and major in electrical engineering, for example, or whatever your major or college is. Your educational summary, I attend so-and-so high school. I have a 3-point or 2-point, whatever GPA, and these are my SAT or ACT test scores, and I'm graduating June of 2021. Your honors and awards, if you've worked, share your employment history briefly, your extracurricular activities, community service, if you have any relevant coursework. I just talked to a young lady who was interested in majoring in neuroscience. She wanted to become a neuroscientist. And so as she picked a major where she was going to study biology or pre-med in college, she called out on her scholar profile those classes that she's taken, like anatomy and chemistry and biology, to help bolster and get more visibility to her interest around that. And then any other hobbies or interests you have, feel free to highlight those if you think they're appropriate to do so. Now, here's how it looks when it's all completed. Simple Microsoft Word document, formatted cleanly. It shouldn't be multiple fonts. You should check your spelling. It should be lined up and neatly formatted. But all those categories I just told you, objective, education, etc., you'll notice they're all listed here in a very concise manner. For students, I don't recommend it being over one page. As someone who's looked at applications and scholarships and been a part of scholarship evaluations, any more than that, you're probably going to lose your audience. So try to be concise and clear as you put this together. I recommend every student putting together a scholar profile, no exceptions. So really consider putting one together for yourself. What it will do is if you have gaps, and I hear you, Maya, I think you said that you're a sophomore. And I would encourage you, if you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, to have this, to create this. And if you're a sophomore, for example, I encourage students to complete this 2 times a year, during their summer break and during their Christmas break. Why? Because you're out of school, but it'll catch what you just did the past semester before you forget it. So create it, save it. And when you create the next version, create it with a version with a new date on it, but have it so that you can update it periodically so that by your senior year, you already have a comprehensive scholar profile and you can just continue to move forward with your planning with that. So as you've developed a plan, now you have your checklist you're following, you have a plan, you have your scholar profile you've developed. Now you really need to start thinking about, okay, which college and which majors do I want to choose? And as you go through this step, you might want to go back and update your scholar profile if you picked a major. That's fine. It's a living document, so you can always tweak it. But here's what I'll tell you about picking the major. Pick something that you're interested in, that's of value to you, you're passionate about, something you can see yourself waking up every morning and doing. If you're not sure and you just want to kind of get some external feedback, ask your parents, counselors, friends, trusted advisors, people that know you well, and say, hey, what do you think that I do well without very much effort? They're going to rattle off some things, and you're going to learn new things about yourself through the eyes of other people. And then I want you to sit back, filter and process what they're saying, and then decide for yourself what that looks like. Now, the one thing I will tell you is think about not overly specializing. And what I mean by that is if you pick a field that doesn't give you the ability to maneuver with that same degree to other things, it may narrowly focus what you can do with that degree. I had a friend at a football game last week. She mentioned her son wanted to work in the aerospace environment. So he was thinking about getting an aeronautical or some sort of degree or mechanical engineering, and asked me what I thought. I says, well, I like the aeronautical. I love STEM, period, but that's a great career. I said, however, could he work in that same industry with a mechanical engineering degree? And she says, well, I think he could. And I said, because what happens if he gets in that industry and he's built his entire degree around it and doesn't like it? But if he got into that same industry with a mechanical engineering degree and loved it, great. But if he didn't, almost everybody out here still needs a mechanical engineer so he can maneuver within different industries. So get something that you can transcend across multiple industries with and not limit yourself if you have that opportunity. Now, the Princeton Review has a website that I've listed here that if you're thinking about different majors and you just want to do some searches on different majors and learn more about them, they have a great tool that will allow you to be able to do that. And at the end of all your research, your self-exploration, asking other people, and then doing independent research online, make a list of those potential majors you're interested in. And then you'll need the list to think about which schools to apply to, because there's a correlation between majors and picking a college. You certainly want to pick colleges or narrow down your short list of colleges based on what programs you need. So if you want to be a neuroscientist, you might want to make sure, or mechanical engineer, that you're picking colleges that have engineering programs, that have neuroscience programs. So you'll need to make sure that there's some alignment. The good news is there's over 2,000 colleges and universities in the United States to pick from. And you can decide how to narrow it down based on factors that are important to you. I also want to introduce that traditionally when you hear me talk, I'm talking about the bottom 4-year colleges and universities. That's when you're doing undergraduate coursework to work towards obtaining a 4-year bachelor's degree. But I recognize that some students may go to a 2-year college, a community or junior college, and work towards an associate's degree, and they may either transfer to a 4-year college to finish the last 2 years, or decide, well, that's about as much as I'm willing to go. I'm going to go out into the workforce. And lastly, some students may decide, I really don't want to spend 4 years in school right now, but I do want to develop a trade or a skill, and they become an electrician or an HVAC mechanic or dental hygienist or a cosmetology specialist, for example. And those certifications or licenses usually take roughly 1 to 2 years to obtain. So they may be able to say, well, okay, I could give it 1 to 2 years and then I can start in my profession. I talked to someone earlier today and she said her daughter didn't want to go to a 4-year school. And they were well off enough to be able to help her. Her mother said, well, what do you want to do? Because you can't just stay here and do nothing. And she says, well, I want to do cosmetology. So you know what her parents did? Not only did they help her with her vocational trade school process to get licensed, but they also helped rented her space in a shop so that she could actually have her own business and charge. It had multiple hairdresser salon chairs, so she could charge other salon chair rent and bring in revenue. So you have to be creative. And I recognize maybe 4-year college may or may not be for everyone, but you certainly want to think it through because it still may be some education required. And there's always a learning process for whatever you're going to do. So I'm going to go back now that I've introduced those and talk about the 4-year colleges, the public and private schools. Now, in my personal story, you heard me talk about Hampton was a private school. My sisters were both at a public school. My mom said, that's too expensive. And one of the things I want to point out are some of the differences between public and a private college. Public schools are generally more affordable. They usually have an in-state and out-of-state tuition rate. They're usually funded by federal and state government entities, and they're usually larger. Private schools, they generally operate in a nonprofit environment where they may get money from investors, alumni, and others, and the students who are paying their tuition. They don't receive a lot of their funding from governmental entities. And they don't really have an in-state and out-of-state tuition rate. They usually have one rate, and that's our tuition rate. But they usually cost more than public schools. And I think it's important for me to share that with you so that you can think about those things as you're selecting the type of colleges. So as you're choosing those colleges, you should be picking schools that are good fits for you, your personality, your background, your interests, your goals. It should be affordable. You're gonna hear me say this multiple times. Go where you can afford. Find out how much it costs to attend and how much you can afford to pay, and have some conversations with your family and your parents about what that looks like. Visit the campuses. I know right now it's difficult with COVID, but there are a lot of colleges offering virtual tours, virtual information available to give you more insight into what their campuses look like, and answer questions you may have. And then start to rank what's important to you. Is it making sure they have your degree? Is it the location? You want to be close to home, away from home? Excuse me, you like the campus size? You find yourself thriving better in a smaller school or larger school? Maybe you want a smaller student to teacher ratio or a larger one, et cetera, et cetera. So figure out those things, rank what's important to you, and then start to look for colleges that meet your needs. There are some online tools here I have listed: bigfuture.collegeboard.org, thecommonapp.org, where you can create an account and look and really research different schools in one place. And then once you've done some research, put together your list. You see a lot of list planning with me, because these things help you when things get really, really start to pick up the pace your senior year. Make a list of those 5 to 10 colleges that you're interested in. Some people say, well, do I have to have 5 schools, or can I have more than 10? Sure, on both ends. But here's what I'll tell you. Make sure you can afford all the fees associated with applications, et cetera, as you're making this list, and make sure you pick in schools at different price points. Don't pick 10 schools out of your price range and don't have any good, solid candidates or options of schools that are within your price range. So be mindful of some of those things. Now, one of the things I didn't mention, but all of my books, all of my slides have a reference at the bottom left-hand corner. It'll tell you which book it came out of. College Planning, as you can see at the bottom, is the green book. And it'll tell you what page number you can get more information on whatever that topic is. In my books, I have templates. On my website, I have templates. So a lot of the things that I share, they are things that I share for students, and I don't ask students to recreate the wheel on these things. My intent is for you to be able to leverage those templates that I already have. I use this for my sons. I don't put anything up here for you all to use that I haven't used. This is a list. This is one spreadsheet where you can have the college name, where they located, do they offer a tour, how much is their tuition, room and board, when's the application due, how much is the application fee, what are the requirements to get in? Oh, I need a 3.3 GPA. Oh, they want SAT scores and essays. You get the picture. But it's a comprehensive spreadsheet. So as you're picking those colleges, you can actually add them to this list. So your top 5 or 10 schools are on one sheet of paper. You can see them all at one time, and you and your parents can make some real good strategic decisions because you have it all that information in one place. Highly recommend utilizing some system like that that will help you. So now you have your scholar profile. You have gotten your schools that you're interested in attending. You've thought through what you want your major to be. So let's talk about the college admissions process. We're going to start out, we're going to talk about each one of these parts in a little bit more detail. The college application itself. It consists of, in my mind, 5 basic parts. You have the application itself. You have the transcripts, the essays, letter recommendations, and the test scores. Most colleges will specify what their requirements are. With COVID, you might see more emphasis on some things and less on others. Like right now, many colleges are having less emphasis on the test scores, which means you have to be stronger with those other 4 areas, other parts of your application, because they don't have that 5th area they may be considering. And generally speaking, you typically can you can apply to colleges 2 ways. You can apply to online. Usually you would create an account and you would go through a web portal or that college's website to apply. Or you could print off the application, attach all your documents to it, and apply by mail. And there's generally a college application fee. And I already talked about, the example with my high school senior this year. His fees, they average anywhere from $35, like up to $100. And we paid almost $950 over the course of a few months getting those applications out. Now, if you have financial hardships, or if you're on reduced or free benefits or resources from your school, check with them, because you may be able to apply to colleges with having your application fees waived. So don't get dismayed if you think, well, I can't afford, to apply to all those schools, but you may be in an income situation where you're going to likely get some help with that. All right, so next, so as you think about applying to schools and you're familiar with those 5 parts, I want to introduce you to 2 web portals that you can go to get comprehensive information on the colleges and apply in the same places. The Common App. Who's heard of the Common App? Let me know in the chat if you've ever heard of the Common Application. Well, if you haven't, let me be the first to introduce you to it. I love it. I used it for my son. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it again. It's where over 900 colleges, great, Ramona, glad that somebody's heard of it. They are members of this Common App system. As a student, you can create an account. You can go and search for the colleges that are participating. You can learn about their requirements, what their eligibility is, when their deadlines are, and you can apply to multiple colleges through that same web portal. Every August 1st, they revise their new application for that upcoming year, and they make it available for you to start applying. And then you can reuse the information that you put in there about yourself for multiple applications. I loved it. I didn't have to type my name is, my address, but one time in that portal, and it'll automatically import that into each application as you were filling it out. It's free to use, the portal itself, but keep in mind that some colleges still require you to pay their application fee through that portal. So once you go ahead and complete the your college application through that portal, at the end, it'll say the application fee for, I make up a school, Georgia Tech is $50. And then it'll prompt you through and show you how to pay for it. And with your credit card at the end of the application process. So I want to introduce you to this because as you're looking at colleges, it's a great one-stop shop place to find out about requirements and what they're looking for and what programs they offer. Now, so that's the Common App. How many of you have heard of the Common Black College app? Because I still know people who are like, I never heard of that before, adults. So I'm going to introduce you. It's very similar to the previous one I talked about. Okay. Alicia says only recently. Ramona says she has. Okay. And so Lynette says she wants the scoop. Let me share the scoop. So roughly 55 HBCUs, they're members of the Common Black College app. Students can do the same, create an account, and there you pay somewhere around $20, maybe $35 for your account fee. And then you can go and look up HBCUs, and if they're members, you can apply through that same portal. You can upload your test scores and do research on colleges there too. The one thing I like about this one, other than the Common App one, here, once you pay that upfront $20, $35 fee, you can apply to multiple HBCUs without paying individual application fees. So Christy, does that mean I can apply to 5 HBCUs and never pay for the application fee? Yes, very likely. So this gives another benefit for doing it, consolidating your efforts in one place. And again, you can use your application over and over. I hope that little scoop helps. It's certainly, I met the young man who, Mr. Mason, I met him 2 years ago, actually at our leadership. I think it was in Nashville. he was there, and we were, he and my mother, they were on a panel together for Target One. And I had a chance to talk to him because Hampton University was not in the Common Black College app. And I said, well, why isn't Hampton there? They didn't want to, in my opinion, they didn't want to waive their application fee. So I took issues with my university, and I, of course, made a call over to our Dean of Admissions to inquire further. But I get off track. So now that's another resource for you to be able to use the Common Black College app. So now you know where you can go to apply and research colleges. Now I want you to think about your transcript, and we've talked a little bit about it. Make sure you know the formal process. You and your parents, like with my son, they had a 4-part process. And had I not done my research earlier, he would have hit his senior year and had been missing steps, and it would have slowed down his ability to get his transcripts out, and it would have irritated my nerves, because when it's time for me to execute, I'm ready to go. I like to pre-set up some things, and when it's time to move, we're in execution mode, not trying to figure it out mode. Your figure it out mode and your execution mode should never be in the same time frame if you can help it. Try to do things to get ahead of yourself. Know the process for getting those transcripts. Make sure that you put in your request early enough ahead of your deadlines for colleges and for scholarships. If you have a college deadline of March 15th, you should already be asking for your transcripts, and it's February 27th. So don't wait until 2 days before you need the deadline to ask the high school to request those. Sometimes the high schools will mail the transcripts. Sometimes they will send you a copy. I also think, and I didn't add this in, but I need to add it for to remind myself to tell families, always get an unofficial copy of your transcript. Now, I drive my kids crazy, as you can imagine. After every semester, when them grades come out, I'm logging into their little Navian system. That's what we use in Virginia. And I am pulling up and making a hard copy, and I'm saving to my computer their unofficial transcripts too. Excuse me for 1 second. My throat is getting dry. And here's why. My son is filling out scholarship applications. Even though he's got a football scholarship, I'm like, okay, let's see what else is out there. And many of the entities right now are actually allowing him to attach his unofficial transcripts. Great. That means I can control that. I don't have to keep running back to the high school for officials. I'm going to attach his unofficial copy and keep his project, his whole effort moving. I will encourage you, and I can't say this with enough emphasis, please don't just request transcripts from your high school for anything and walk away without making sure it was done. They have hundreds of seniors, hundreds of students. They have good intentions sometimes with poor execution. It is your responsibility to circle around and make sure you send it out. Okay, which date? I'm marking it down. When you send it out, making sure that I have all kind of transparency to make sure my dots connect. So I highly recommend that you make sure that they follow through. So that's the transcript part of the application. Now we're going to talk about essays and letters of recommendation. Now, the reason why I created this slide is because there was a bit of confusion. Most students thought, oh, I only need essays for college admissions or letters of recommendation. I'm going to get my English teacher to write me a letter of recommendation to get into Hampton. But what happens when you go to apply for scholarships and they say they need a letter of recommendation? Do you think your scholarship entity is going to want a recommendation that starts out, dear college official, please admit Christy into your university? That makes sense. So I encourage students to have 2 types of both. You need an essay for college admissions and scholarships, and you need letters of recommendation for college admissions and scholarships. For college admissions, you're answering the question, why are you a good candidate for me to allow you to attend my college? And for scholarships is, why should you be a candidate for me to award you my money? So the asks and the requests are different. So as you're strategically planning out how you spend your time and how you get people to help you, I always tell students, ask the same recommender for 2 letters. I'm going to go to my English teacher. I'm going to say, I need 2 letters from you. They're going to be worded similar, but they're going to be started out and formatted a little bit differently. 1 for college admissions and 1 for scholarships. So just something I learned from my own practical experiences. Also, so now I'm going to talk about them separately. Essay writing. I have a whole talk I do about essay writings. Right now, I will tell you, essays are probably the single most differentiator for you getting accepted into the colleges you want and finding scholarships at this stage. At the time in which you're filling out an essay, your grades are what they are. You're putting together a package now. So for you rising seniors, you current juniors, you finishing out your junior year strong is imperative, because those are grades most colleges are going to see. So don't think you're going to have your whole senior year to get your GPA right. Start if you haven't, but be mindful of what you're doing now, because those transcripts after this semester are the ones that most colleges are going to see first. So your grades are already going to be locked in. So where can you influence their decision at now? Essays, letters of recommendation. This is your opportunity with your essay to tell the story of who you are, what you're about, what do you want to do to make a difference. You should do those things in your essay writing. You should draft them early. If you're a rising junior, you should be drafting your essays over the summer. I had my son do that. We were not writing essays into the fall. You got plenty of free time. If you spend X amount of time a day or over the course of the summer, you can have some scholarship and some college admissions essays written. Get someone you trust to proofread it. If they can't talk good and they can't write good, that's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you have a family member, a friend, someone in your community who has great writing capabilities, reach out to them, ask them to look at it. You can also take advantage of free online proofreading sources like Grammarly. I use it a lot with my graduate work. Anybody in grad school, whoever used Grammarly, give me a shout out in the chat. But it'll spit you back a report of every area where you need to work on. Okay, some folks say they love it. That's what I'm talking about. I love it too, because I can't pick up on everything. So use those things to your advantage. And here's another one of my pet peeves, and you'll hear them come out periodically. Please follow directions. If somebody give you instructions and they say, please type our essay, type it. If they say handwrite it, handwrite it. If they say don't go over 500 words, don't give them 501. I'm a stickler about following directions. And if there are people who are like me on the other side of evaluating you, they probably are too. Adhere to the deadlines. For sure, don't turn it in late. That's an automatic disqualification. And write and address a specific topic they ask you about. You don't know how many people will say, Christy, write me an essay on leadership. And I get to talking about basket weaving, and has nothing to do with bringing in leaders, nothing related to the topic. And you want to be taken serious. So it needs to be concise and specific, but it needs to really concisely tie into the topic or the question they asked you to write about. Make sure you save all those different topics, because you're going to find, and I'm finding it every day with helping my son, all those essays we wrote, oh, they want a personal statement, use this one. Oh, they want to talk about innovation because he wants to major in computer science, so that's a STEM scholarship. Oh, let's use these over here. And you don't have to start from scratch every time you need an essay. Also, demonstrate you know something about the college, the entity, some facts, statistics, their mission statement, something. What do I mean by that? I'm writing an essay and I say, hey, I'm interested in going to Hampton University. And I know that Hampton University is big on integrity. Well, in my essay writing, I want to talk about how I know that your university, prides itself in integrity just as I do. Oh, look at this. She actually took the time to learn something about us. Great idea. And also share how you plan to make a difference. Now, as I said before, you use this as an opportunity to sell yourself, highlight your accomplishments. But you also use it as an opportunity to say, here's how I want to make a meaningful difference for others in my community, in the world. People want to see you extend yourself beyond just you. They want to know how you're going to take your engineering background and come up with innovative solutions to solve emerging issues in the future. Okay, that's the kind of person we want, who's going to try to pay it forward. And as I mentioned, definitely save them and reuse them. Now, in your essays, let's go back to basic English. You should have 3 parts. And if you need to start with an outline, I would highly encourage it. I still do it to this day. It helps me to organize my thoughts. But you should definitely have in your writing an introduction, setting the stage, a body, and a conclusion. And if they tell you to write about a particular topic, then your introduction needs to tee it up with 2 or 3 main points, and then your body needs to address each one of those main points, and then you conclude it. And that's where you can use that as an opportunity to talk about how you want to make a difference in the world with all those other things you just described. I wrote an essay for a scholarship recently for myself and something else I was doing professionally. And I opened it up and I said, it was a writing on leadership. And I said, when I was a senior in high school, I ran for senior class, is it senior government? No, SGA, Student Government Association, that's what it was. And I lost. I ran for that office as the president and lost. Now I got their attention. I was like, well, where's she going with this? We're talking about leadership, but obviously she didn't even get the position. But I was able to describe how I felt, what I thought leadership was about, what I learned about myself, and how I overcame that challenge of not being voted SGA president. And what do I want to do with it moving forward? So that's how you tell a story about yourself, but you don't just focus on the problem in your writing. People don't want to be depressed. They want you to highlight, hey, I had a problem, had a flat tire, my mother lost her job, whatever. But they don't want you to stay there for the whole essay. They want you to show how you got on the other side. Now, the last thing I'll say about essays is there are 10 common essay themes that I generally hear and see people ask students to write about in these categories. I just mentioned leadership. You see that on here. I mentioned personal statements. You see that on here. Sometimes they'll ask you to write about community service or financial need if they want you to describe why you're in more need than another student. So those are examples of things that you can start writing essay prompts on now. Even if you did a couple of paragraphs on each one of these, you don't know how much that'll help you your senior year. So that is essays. Now I want to transition to talk about letters of recommendation. We've talked some about it. We know that you need it for 2 different instances. I want to share with you, you should be asking different people in your life who serve different roles to write letters for you: teachers, school counselors, coaches, employers, community leaders, and others. So start thinking about who can write those letters and make a list. And make sure that when you're asking for letters of recommendation, that you ask for both types and you ask for an electronic copy. And I generally tell students to generalize it so that you don't just put Dear Hampton University. So what happens if you want to apply for 4 other schools? Now you got to go back and get them to write another letter just to change the name and sign it again, wasting their time. I always, unless the school or entity requires me to put their name on it, I always make it more general. Dear College Admissions Official. I can use that for every college I apply for. Dear Scholarship Entity. I can use it for every scholarship. So those are the kind of things that I want you to think about that'll help save you time later. Make sure you give your recommenders enough time to write your letter. Don't give them, don't wait till the last minute to ask them to write it. I also think that you should follow up to make sure you receive your recommendation by the deadline and that they submitted by the deadline. And I see, Lynette, I'm tracking with you. My 4th bullet down. Offer a pre-drafted letter of recommendation for them to tailor. You want to know how I feel about it? That's the only way I work with my son and his endeavors. We will not ask somebody to write a letter that we didn't already pre-draft. Why? Because you'll get it back in record time. It gives them more insight how serious you are about it. To move your letter up to the top of their list. And it shows that you're taking initiative. And I'm going to give you a sample of how that will sound in theory. So Lynette, I'm going to use you as my guinea pig. So I'm going to ask Miss Lynette, who's my English teacher. How you doing, Miss Lynette? I'm, Christy, I had you in English in the 10th grade. I really liked your class and I did very well in it. And I'd love to know whether or not you are willing to write a letter of recommendation for me. I would love it if you would, one for college applications and for scholarships. Here it is. I have 2 pre-drafted letters for your consideration. And how about we make this connection? My scholar profile. So you can learn more about me as you think about tailoring the sample recommendation letter that I gave you. Now, Lynette, if you can let us all know in the chat, Miss Lynette, my English teacher, if you would be willing to write a letter if a student came to you that way. If you're talking, okay, she says certainly. So see, that's my point. You want to do everything you can to let people help you help yourself. And so you definitely want to give them your scholar profile and make it easy for them. Now, I have a template. Here we go again. I love my templates for students because you don't have time to start this from scratch. I do have a template on my website and in my workbook. And it's simple. You can fill in the blanks. I invest in others. I, Christy Murray, was invest in others. I'm writing this letter to express my support for Miss Lynette Amapour and her college application for blank. You can fill in the blanks. And then when you get down to certain parts, you can put in the adjectives or the actions that best describe what you've done, and they can tweak it. You send it to them electronically in a Word document as an attachment to an email, and they'll take it from there. I had a student who did this with me. I was watching a football game on a Sunday. I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. I'm sitting on the couch, rare time to relax. My phone rings. My girlfriend says, hey, my son needs a letter of recommendation. Will you? Yes. I'm going to email it to you. She sent me his scholar profile. She sent me a draft letter of recommendation. You know when he got that back? During halftime of the game. I went upstairs during halftime. I printed it out, his scholar profile. I tweaked it because there's certain things I already knew about him I wanted to say. I signed it, scanned it back into my computer, and I emailed it back. He had it before the game was over. So that's what I'm saying. If you do these simple things, people will quickly turn around those things that you need. All right, so that's the essay and the letter of recommendation. Those were parts of your college application package. You also may have test scores, and I think this was the last section. We know right now with COVID, some colleges are making it test optional. They'll take the test scores, but if you don't provide them, they're not going to hold it against you. As you can see in orange on this little map in the right-hand corner, those are the areas that many students take predominantly the SAT. And toward the middle part of the country is where many students generally take the ACT. I thought you might want to see that visual. We're in Virginia and we do a lot with the SATs, and I grew up in Virginia going to school. But you guys are in Alaska, I presume. So I'm thinking I don't know, let me know in the chat if you hear more about the ACT or SAT where you are. So with them making it test optional, generally outside of a COVID situation, I tell my students to take both. Why take both? I don't want to take both. The test costs like $40-something each. You're talking about $100 in to take 2 tests, figure out which one you naturally test the best at. Then you get into a prep course, and for that one you naturally tested the best, and then you retake it shortly after. I did this with my niece. My mother and I ended up paying about $400 or $500 for her to take a prep course because my sister couldn't afford for her to pay for college. This young lady with a 3.2 grade point average got probably 1,100 or 1,200 on the SAT and ended up getting a merit scholarship for college. Her scholarship award amount was $30,000 a year times 4 years. Do the math, that's $120,000. And we spent $500, the best $500 I've spent in ages. So sometimes the short-term sacrifices could have huge returns on their investments later. Now, I did include here the SAT registration and ACT registration sites for you to consider. Now, also I want to mention, we talked about finding colleges. Why is that important? Here's another example why you need to have an idea of which schools you're interested in. Because when you get ready to register for those tests, they want to know which schools would you like us to send your scores to. Well, if you're clueless, you're not going to be able to easily say this school, this school, this school, and rattle those off. So all these pieces about planning and preparation are really interconnected. Now, I did talk about prep courses. I used to get a lot of questions. Well, which ones do you think, I should look at? And they're here in this box. Kaplan, the Princeton Review does a lot of great things. Khan Academy, they have the best free SAT prep where you don't have to pay for it. And then the ACT prep online, they only have the ACT prep, but it's very engaging and fun for students. And it may cost you $40, maybe a little bit more now. But those are the things I'm talking about. And I don't encourage you to pick a prep or decide not to prep because of the cost of it. Because as you can see, there's free opportunities too. Do what you can afford, but most certainly do some prep work. So now we've checked the box. We've gotten through all parts of the application. I do this with my son. I make an application checklist, both for colleges and scholarships. And these are the common things they ask for. As you notice, the scholar profile, I'm added it in. I always add this into my son's applications under one condition. If they allow additional documents, add the scholar profile for both colleges and scholarships. If they say, and I mean this with emphasis, if they say, do not add any additional documents, don't add the scholar profile. They may be looking for ways to disqualify people who can't follow directions, and we're not going to take you out of the running for it because you added documents that they didn't ask you for. But you read through their instructions and you say, okay, they'll allow additional documents. I'm gonna separate myself from the competition and add my scholar profile. And then they may also ask you for financial aid documents. If you're looking for need-based funding, they may require more documentation. So since we just ended on need-based funding, I thought, okay, let's spend a few minutes, and let me look at the time, because I do want to spend a few minutes talking about the funding process, which is very, very important. When I wrote the first book, I used to talk to people and go out nationally and talk pre-COVID, and I still talk virtually now with many, many families. And they would say, you know what? Well, my daughter got in, or I got in, but guess what? We don't know how to pay for it. So I sat down and I said, I've got to address this for families who not only need to get accepted with the other book, but they need to be able to pay for it. And if I believe in a debt-free education, I tell my kids this all the time, only thing better than a quality education is a quality-free education. So what I try to emphasize are things to help you to be more cognitive of how much college costs and to find ways to graduate college debt-free, because we know the student loan rates are high and the number of folks in debt from student loans is off the charts. It's over 1.6 billion or trillion dollars in student loan debt. So we've got to try to help break that cycle and that need. So I'm off my soapbox. So I do want to talk about navigating the funding process. What does she mean when she's talking about financial aid and all this stuff? So let's get into that. One of the things that you'll do when you start looking at colleges is paying closer attention, like you never have before, to how much they cost. Because why? Because the expectation is that you should be planning to go where you can afford, unless your parents are wealthy and they have it covered. If they do, great. If they don't, stick with me so we can talk about other things that'll help. The typical college expenses, there's the tuition itself, there's a room and board if you're going to live on campus and need to eat, there's books and supplies, and then there are personal expenses. And as you can see from this chart here on the right, the average cost of tuition is different if you're going to a public in-state school. It's roughly 10K-ish on average, 22 if it's a public but out of state. You're going to double. If just because you live out of the state, if you guys wanted to leave Alaska and come to school in Virginia and you picked a public school, they're going to charge you an out-of-state rate. So you're going to pay more to go to that same school than students who already live in Virginia. And then you have your dear old private schools like the one I went to. And as you can see, $36,000 on average into it is what it's likely to cost you. So you have to be mindful of what those costs are. And the only other thing I'll say, and this is just another depiction of how much those schools can cost, that some of the direct costs associated with them. I will say during COVID, though, many families are being able to cut down those costs because their students are taking virtual classes, so they don't have the room and board fees associated with being on campus. But you should certainly, as you're thinking about the cost of the schools that you put on your short list, have some conversations with your family and your parents, if they're helping you, or other guardians, and make sure you understand how it's going to get paid for. Very important. So you should also think about how you're going to pay for it. As you're having that conversation, be mindful of the different ways you can pay for it. You can pay out of pocket, maybe cash. Maybe your family has a college savings plan, like a 529 plan, or retirement plan, which I do not recommend unless it's the absolute worst last resort. I think college is college and retirement is retirement. But there may be some situations where it may be warranted. Financial aid and gift aid, like scholarships and grants. So those we'll talk a little bit more about in terms of financial aid. And you'll hear people talk about financial aid from now to the end of time when you're in college. And what they're really talking about is money that you have to help, money that is available to help pay for college. That's simply put. There's different types. There's student loans, which is my least favorite. That's money that a student can borrow or a parent can borrow, but it has to be paid back, and usually with interest. Number 2, work study. Students can work at the university while they're in college, and the university will offset some of the cost of their tuition and room and board expenses based on how much they earn. And then you have scholarships. This is my favorite kind of financial aid, y'all, because it's a free gift, and so are grants, scholarships and grants. They're free aid that you do not have to pay back. They generally come with very few stipulations, and they give you that funding if you qualify, and you don't have to pay it back. So how do you kick off that process? Usually you kick off your financial aid process during your senior year. If you've heard of the free application for federal student aid, I'm going to refer to it as FAFSA, but it's an application that you have to complete to get any federal money. Let me know if you chat in the chat if you've heard of FAFSA before. I listed the website here, and I will make these slides available to Psi Omega for their students. But if you are planning to apply for any federal financial aid, the government is not going to give you a penny if you haven't completed the FAFSA. It's free to do the application, and colleges will certainly use it as they determine whether you're eligible for any of their financial aid. Every October, they release their new application. And prior to each school year, you'll need to complete the FAFSA. So if you are a senior, like we talked about, my son's a senior, October, we was filling out his FAFSA. Because see, if you don't fill it out, you can't be eligible for financial aid. And we've already established that they're giving out financial aid on the first come, first served basis. So if you wait till the spring to fill out your FAFSA, you missing out on money too. So we did it early. Now, here's this last bullet is very important. Every year you're in college, you must complete the FAFSA for each upcoming year so that you can be considered for new aid the next year. You can't make the assumption that I did it one time already. Dang, why I got to do it again? Because they're looking at your current finances and maybe some things have changed and they need you to refresh. That's what you'll need to do. Even if I have scholarships, Miss Christy, hey, I got a full ride. Do I need to fill out financial aid? Absolutely. Every year. I don't care what your financial profile looks like, it works to your advantage to complete it. All right, so it sounds like several of you have heard of the FAFSA. That's very encouraging. So I added this slide just recently because I was talking through all these steps and I could tell the students was looking at me like, what in the world is she talking about? So I created this visual. And here's how it goes. You fill out the FAFSA in blue. Follow me on the blue box and working our way around. You and your parents sit down, you get all your financial documents, you complete the form. Here's where you need to know which colleges you're going to again. Why they keep trying to ask me where I want to go to school? Because they need it for decision making. So you select your college. You put those 5, 10 schools that you plan on applying to on your FAFSA. So that when they calculate your expected family contribution, your EFC, which is really what they use to say, this is how much your family can afford to pay. They're going to also send that to the colleges that you listed on your application. Those colleges in the green box, they're going to use their own formula. They're going to take your EFC. Let's say my EFC was $10,000. They think I can pay $10,000 roughly. They're going to send it to Hampton. Hampton's going to create a financial aid award for me. And then in that purple box, they're going to send me this award letter. And they're going to say, here you go, Christy. Here's how much we think you're going to get in financial aid. We're going to give you $5,000 in student loans. We're going to give you $3,000 in a grant. That's 8. And they may give you $3,000 in a scholarship. That's $11,000. But at the top, it's going to tell you that it costs $30,000 to go to Hampton. So who in the world is going to come up with that other $19,000? That's when you get to that orange box. And you have to decide, did they give me enough money to pay for all of that? Or am I short? If you're not short and you have enough money, then great. But if you are short, then that's when you get into my passion. You need to be looking for scholarships and grant opportunities. And I'm going to focus primarily on scholarships. There are different types of scholarships. How many of you think you have to have, and we already talked about this in the assessment, so I'm not going to ask the question, I'm just going to say it. There are merit scholarships that are based on academics, 2.5, 3.0 minimum grade point average. But please don't be discouraged to think that the only scholarships that are out there in this entire world are merit scholarships, because that would not be true. There's need-based. Some scholarship entities say, you know what? We want to help students who are less fortunate. We want to give them a fighting chance at a quality education too. There's interest-based. We want to give scholarships to students who are disabled, students who are left-handed, right-handed, who wear glasses, who play the guitar, the piano, who's in the arts, who's in sports. As you can see here, sports, military service scholarships, etc. So there's a whole host of opportunities for interest-based scholarships, but you have to look for them. They're not going to come knocking on your door. You're going to have to go seek those out. I'm going to tell you a little story about the military scholarship. I have a cousin. He's much younger than me. Just graduated from Hampton University in 2019. I helped him to get a naval ROTC scholarship. Paid all his tuition, room, and board. They gave him a stipend while he was in college, and he had medical benefits and like summer intern-ish type activities with that. When he graduated in 2019, you know, I was at his graduation. He got commissioned the day before as an officer in the United States Navy. He graduated debt-free. He didn't owe anybody a penny. And he was well off on his way to the next phase of life. He had a job with the United States Navy. I think he may have had to do maybe a 3 to 5 year employment obligation with the Navy. But if you're paying my tuition, I might strongly consider that. So he was positioned very well with zero debt coming out of school. And that's what I'm trying to help students to understand. There's many different paths to reducing what that looks like. So same way with a scholarship application, you have different parts, just like you do a college application. I'm only going to touch on a couple. You notice that there's financial documents at the top, because now you're asking people for money. So they might want to know, okay, Christy, let me see your tax form. Let me see your expected family contribution from the FAFSA you filled out, so I can make sure you really are in need for our money provided. They also may want to know, we'll give you money. We have a scholarship for you to go to Hampton, but we need to know you've already been accepted. So they may ask you to provide proof that you've already been accepted, or you're currently already attending Hampton or whatever college it is. So just be mindful that you might get asked to provide a few more pieces. Now, I love talking about this. So the same way I think you should have a college plan, I think that you should have a scholarship plan. You can roll them up and all in the same document if it's simple and easy for you. You should target scholarship amounts. Don't turn your nose up because somebody's only offering a $500 scholarship. Money adds up. I'm all for the $10, $30, $40, $50,000 scholarships, but I'm equally a champion for the $500, $1,000, $1,500 scholarships. Don't limit where you apply. I'm only going to apply for the national scholarships like the Bill and Melinda Gates and Colgate and Coca-Cola. Okay. And you and the other 60,000 people who are applying for the same 15 scholarships, let me know how that work out for you. I'm not saying don't apply, but don't only apply just to those. You know where the real gems are? They are in the local scholarship area. There are local organizations, nonprofits, Greek organizations like Psi Omega, and I'm sure they have a scholarship. Let us know in the chat, Psi Omega. Drop the link to your scholarship in the chat for your students. But all these local organizations have scholarship, churches, religious organizations, companies, you name it. You know why? Because they're trying to help students in their community. But guess what? I was on our scholarship committee in my AKA chapter. We had very few local students apply. You know what that said to the ones who did? It increased their probability of getting awarded a scholarship if they met our eligibility criteria, because nobody else was applying. Why would you not want to apply for the scholarships that most people aren't applying for? So change your strategic approach. Apply for the ones that are the low-hanging fruit that most people aren't thinking about. Find a scholarship mentor. I met a young lady named Maya Mundale, and you can Google her name and you'll pop up with all kind of videos and stuff. But I had coffee with her one day and I said, Maya, how did you get over $1 million in scholarships and a full ride to Cornell University, Ivy League school? And she told me her whole story, but something stuck out for me. She got a scholarship mentor. She applied for the Bill and Melinda Gates Scholarship. The one I just talked about was a national scholarship, but she got it. Here's why. She said she went to their website. She checked out who had been past recipients, and she reached out to a couple of the people that had given money to in the past, befriending them. Hey, well, you're willing to be a mentor for me? I'm going through the same scholarship process. Someone, yes, $1 million. And somebody said, yeah, I'll help you. And so she said, well, what did you do? And one of the things they said was they often made sure that they wrote their essays about how they wanted to make a meaningful difference. But because she had a mentor, they could help her shape her essay. They could help her with some eclectic things that made her package stand out from others. And it worked for her. Obviously, $1 million into it, it worked very well. Don't run from the essays, y'all. Many people don't apply for scholarships because they're too lazy. And I'm gonna call it out for what it is. I do keep it real in my talks. Too lazy to dedicate an hour or two worth of time and write some powerful essays. If you're willing to write essays, you are well ahead of the many students who won't and who don't. It's going to increase your chances of getting funding. Make sure you provide all the required documentation for your application packages and you track your scholarship progress. Well, you know, it's Miss Christy's time for another template. My son is using this, I promise you right now. He's got 15 or 16 scholarships on it. And we're adding to the list this week. We sit down once a week and we come up with more scholarships and we apply. We spend one day a week applying for scholarships. I would encourage you to look for scholarships every day and save the links, save the URLs in one document file so that when you're ready to apply, you can go back to it. I saved mine here. You see the second or third row, it says application link. I'll just pop the links in right now and then I'll come back to it and fill it in when I get close to applying. It's a scholarship name. What do you need to do to be eligible? How much are they giving you with the award amount? When's the deadline to apply? That's one of the most important columns on this sheet. I highlight that yellow every time we apply. Whether or not they require essays and the other parts of the application we've talked about. And then I have a column for when we actually submitted our application. Very, very, very important. And so what I would encourage you to do is put all that in one place. Again, I'm all for like one place, making it simple for yourself. And then when you get ready to apply, you can just go down the list. And I even categorize mine by the due date. The February ones were up top, the March ones were in the middle, and the April and May were below. You know why? Because I'm going to focus my time in February on the ones that's due in February. Same with March. I'm in March right now on my sons. And so is he. So I always hear this question, well, where do I find scholarships, Miss Christy? Miss Christy, do they have a scholarship for biology? Miss Christy, do they have a scholarship for ... They have scholarships for everything. In fact, I would challenge you to come up with an area or a topic where you can't find scholarship money. Use Google to your advantage. They always say, well, where can I find it? I can't find no scholarships. Have you looked? Where have you looked? Did you even just Google scholarships for biology majors? Oh no, you haven't tried? So let's go back to the basics. Your school counseling office has scholarships. My son's school, they put out scholarships every week. Check with your school counseling office. Online, there's a host of different websites you'll see here listed that I have either used or that $1 million young lady that I talked about, Maya Mundale, she's even used many of these. And they have worked to help, you can put your information in and create an account, and then it will filter out scholarships that you might be eligible for and share with you the deadlines and awards and all those things. And then even my company, I have a scholarship list in green at the bottom here for where you can find scholarships on my website that I hear about, and I'll post them to my website. So with all that being said, and I know we've talked about so many different things, and I hope you found this to be somewhat useful to you and for you. But I would encourage you as I wrap up to take responsibility for your future. Nobody should be willing to work harder for you than you working for yourself. Don't waste your time. Start early during the summers. Use them to your advantage where you have more time. You're not competing with activities and schoolwork. Get ahead of yourself and get organized. Now, I did these things with my son, and I'm not at home right now, but ordinarily I have a thick folder at home that I would use, and it has everything about his college in that folder. I also have a folder file system on my computer set up for applications, scholarship, essays. And I pull all those things into that so we can find them in one place. Also, create a document, or I use my phone actually for my son. I save all of his account username and passwords in one place, and he has a note section on his phone where he does the same. Because you're going to go into and visit so many different sites that will require you to set up login information, and you're not going to be able to retain it all when you need it the most. So I don't even try to remember anymore. I have confidence that I'm going to find it on my phone. Every time I set up something new, I stop, I take the 5 seconds required, and I add it to my list. The other thing I did was I created a joint email address for my son. camcollege@gmail.com. Everything related to college is in that, we have sent to that one email address. Why? Because for some reason, you guys' generation will not check email every day like you do all these other social media accounts. And he was missing things. And I said, we're not doing that. Virginia Tech wanted you to fill out another form, but you didn't hear about it because you didn't check your email. Now you've missed the deadline. So now we've got to go back and ask for an extension. So those are the things that you can do to help yourself. Now, he has access to that email address, and so do I. Every day, one of the two of us, I'm in here, I'm like, hey, did you see that email? You need to go check it and respond. It helps you to be responsive and save yourself from having to chase down things later. Take advantage of the resources, whether they're in your school, your community, online, and be willing to follow through with all these folks who are going to helping you. Don't just rely on recommenders to get your stuff out. As you get close to the deadline, you need to be saying, hey, do you remember this is due? I need it by? Okay, you got it? Oh, you sent it? Fantastic. Same with the schools. My transcripts are gone now, right? You got all these on this list? Okay, great. Your responsibility. Create a budget. We've talked about that. Have a plan. Track your progress. Very important. My another pet peeve, don't waste people's time. If somebody is willing to write a letter for you, and they say, I need your scholar profile and the sample letter you suggested by Friday, and you wait till Wednesday of the next week to send them, shame on you. And don't look for their help at that point. Consider it lost opportunity. I've had students do that to me. You know what I tell them? And I let them know up front, I manage their expectation. If you're not going to get it complete and send it to me by when I ask, please take me off your list, because you're not going to waste my time because you're not willing to be responsive and take some ownership. And lastly, for your parents, for your teachers, school counselors, recommenders, anybody that's helping you, even Psi Omega, please say thank you and let people know that you appreciate their efforts. Now, with that being said, I am concluding my general talk. I know some of you asked about the book. I would recommend you get it from my website. You get a little bit cheaper from my website than you would get it from Amazon. And these books have actually workbooks that you can purchase with them on my website only. And so you can get some of those templates that we talked about. Here, I'm going to provide this presentation, but there's some useful links you might find helpful, and things that we've already talked about. Feel free to follow me. I'm on Facebook. I know most of you young people aren't, but I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok as of this week. I just started TikToking last Sunday, and I'm already up to 1,400 followers just after pushing videos for the last 6 days. So I'm really excited about that. And then if there are other things that I've talked about, check my YouTube channel, Invest in Others. You'll find a whole host of videos on many topics, like the essay writing one I talked about earlier, that you might find to be valuable. Now, with that being said, I'm going to open it up for questions, and I'm going to turn it back over to Psi Omega to facilitate questions. And I don't know if they want you to come off mute or they want you to do it in the chat, but thank you. And I'm happy to answer questions. So take advantage of this time while I'm here, and you can ask me whatever you want. There is no wrong question.
Thank you, Dr. Christy, for that wonderful presentation. Very informative. I see in the chat box, we all learned some valuable information. And so at this time, if you have any questions, we would like to ask that you unmute yourself or raise your hand just feel free to jump in and ask your questions. Okay, not seeing any questions. If you feel like you're too shy to ask your questions, feel free to put it in the chat box. We'll have someone looking in the chat box and they'll go in there and they'll answer your questions for you. Also, we have in the chat box the link to purchase those 2 books from Dr. Christy. As she said, do not purchase on Amazon. It's much cheaper to, it's much inexpensive to purchase on her website. So please do that. And at this time, we do have some polling questions that I'm going to ask you all to participate in. So I'll pull those polling questions up. The first one is, which test do you plan on taking? The ACT, the SAT, or both? Okay, thank you. So we see that our students plan on taking both tests. Thank you for that. So our next question is, how did you hear about this event? Did you hear about this event on Facebook, your school guidance counselor, Eventbrite, from a friend or a family member, or other? So 2 people heard about the event from Facebook, 1 person from Eventbrite, 1 person from their friend or family member, and 2 from other. So for those 2 people who heard from other, if you don't mind, you can unmute yourself and tell us how you heard about us in this event, or you can put it in the chat box. It's totally up to you. Are you a high school junior or senior, or neither? As we did state earlier, this program was designed specifically for high school juniors and seniors. I do know we have 1 student who said that she's a high-level sophomore taking additional courses to graduate early in 2022. So we will work with her on a level that is specific designed for her for this program. Okay, thank you. Do you need help with applying for financial aid? Okay, excellent. Okay. Someone said no. For the person who said no, if you would put in the chat box, have you already applied for financial aid, or have you already met your goal for the max amount of money you need to go to college? Is that the reason why you don't need a financial aid assistance? Do you need help applying for scholarships? Okay, excellent.
What was the response? Did they need help? What was the?
Yes, they needed help applying for scholarships. And do you need help with writing your college admissions essays? So the results were yes, they do need help with that, which is excellent. We're here to help. And what about your portfolio? And correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Christy, but you call it something a little bit different. You call it a profile, correct? From Virginia, you guys call it profiles? Okay.
Call a profile.
So do you need help preparing for your portfolio or your profile? Yes or no? So the answer was yes. Okay, and what about finding the right college for you? Do you need help deciphering, should I go to a HBCU? Should I go to a PWI, predominantly white institution, or historically Black college and university? I need help finding the right college for me. Do you need help with that? So the response was no, 1 no and 2 yes. 1 no and 1 yes. Okay. And one of our last questions that we have for you all is, if we decide to have our CAP meetings and have it once a month with our platform with Psi Omega, or we have alternatives to meet with other different platforms that we can invite you with. So that way you can have different resources such as Dr. Christy from our other sorority members in different states across the country that can provide you with valuable resources. We have a question for you, like what day works best for you? What meeting time? So I'm going to launch a poll and just choose which one that works best for you so we can have an idea. Because remember, we're on Alaska Standard Time, but a lot of our other organizations, they meet in Eastern Standard Time or Pacific or Central Standard Time. So we want to get an idea so I can bring back that information to my committee meetings. And if you don't see a time that works best for you, go ahead and drop it into the chat box. So one person said Saturday around 4 p.m. Alaska time. Okay. So both people said Saturday at 4 p.m. around Alaska Standard Time. Okay, so at this very moment, that concludes our polling. And I'm gonna just share on the screen with you some of the reasons why we asked those important questions was because we want to be able to tailor our events specifically for you. So that way we know what you need help with. So for those who need help with writing their admission essays, we have some potential workshops, college admissions essay writings, do's and don'ts. So this can help you better determine if you want to become a part of that workshop. One of our other workshops that we could potentially have, resume writing 101. So if you want to get a work study job or some other after school job or a summer job to help you earn money for college, do you need help with writing a resume to get you employed? Also, we talked about taking your SAT and ACT. We had some students who said they want to take both tests. So we want to be able to provide you tips on how to do that. So we want to be able to provide those workshops for you. And also the portfolio workshop, we had 2 people who stated that they want to be able to have help with that as well. So that's a potential workshop, as well as applying for scholarships and financial aid and HBCUs versus PWIs, finding the right school for you. So that's why we did those polling so we can get a better idea of what you may need help with. So if you have questions, you can also email us at akaexpo@gmail.com, or you can reach out to me via text message or give me a phone call. My phone number is 907-306-4965, Lynette Ampadu, and we'll get you tailored with the right mentor for you. But in the meantime, we want to remind you that we do need your application back signed. We need your parental consent form back signed. We also need your student agreement form back signed, stating that you want to be a part of this program. You'll be committed to do the work in the program. And we also need the pre-assessment form completed. So again, please email those to akaexpo@gmail.com or reach out to me via phone if you have any questions, or text message at 907-306-4965. Again, we thank you all for joining us for our program. If there's anyone at this time that have any questions or any comments, would like to say something to Dr. Christy, this is the time to do it. Please feel free to unmute yourselves, and the floor is now yours. Thank you all. And for Dr. Christy, I want to thank you for joining us. You have provided us with a lot of information. We really appreciate your time and your concern and all the work that you're doing for our students across the country. So again, we appreciate you and we thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. So I want to turn the floor over to Margot Bellamy.
Good evening, afternoon, I'm sorry. Anyway, I just wanted to thank Dr. Christy. This is by far, I've been in a lot of these presentations. This is by far the most comprehensive, well-organized. And I just want to thank the committee for the CAP committee for all the work that they're doing. And I'd like to at least suggest that we purchase those books for all of our participants, so that we give one set per family. And I'll do that the right way, but I just want us to be thinking about that. But thank you, Dr. Murray. And I am going to share your information, make sure it gets in the Anchorage School District, and with our state level organizations as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Margot. We appreciate that comment. And yes, we will work together as an organization to ensure that all of our participants receive your books. Very great information and resources. Thank you. Are there anyone else that have any comments or questions? And I hope you don't mind, but I would like to highlight someone if they're still here. Let's see. I want to have anyone that came in late, if they want to introduce themselves and their role they're going to play in the CAP program. Is there anyone that wants to say anything before we leave out? I don't want to leave anyone out. All righty. Well, at this time, that concludes our program, and we thank you all for joining us.
Well, I want to thank you, Lynette, as our program chair for this program, and thank Dr. Christy again. As Margaret says, this was great, fantastic information. And majority of Xi members work in the school district, so your information will be going into the school district surely. And Margot is a member of our Anchorage School District. Yeah, school board. I'm sorry, Margot. School board. So it'll go through. And again, thank you everyone for participating, and we will discuss getting your books. I was thinking about that also, Margot, so thank you.
Awesome.
I just ran into another, she's a principal at a high school in New Jersey. She called me up the other day and mentioned that she wanted to get a set of the books for her entire junior class. Both books. So she had worked with her daughter. She took her daughter to a conference a couple of years ago, and her daughter was using those templates, and it worked well for her. And so she called me back out of the blue earlier this week, and she said, I need to do it for my entire junior class. So it's starting to pick up some traction. The thing about it is it should be practical and useful, and it should be things that students can, school counselors who already have a lot of stuff to do, they can hopefully introduce or provide those resources and be really a complement to the students, be able to help themselves, but giving them tools that they don't have to build from scratch, but they can just take and use and really help them to meet their needs. So I appreciate that. It's good to hear.
We do have a hand risen by Ramona Rivers. You have the floor.
Sorry, that was an error, but thank you so much, Dr. Murray, for your presentation today. And both my daughters are also Hampton University graduates. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
Fantastic, and always great to hear.
All right, so if there are no other questions or comments, we're going to end the program. And Dr. Murray, I'll reach out to you later just to say thank you and have some one-off conversations. And with the committee, I'll meet with you after so we can just do an eval. And then Maya, we see that you're still on the line. We thank you for joining. If you would, please work with your parents to get those forms completed and get it emailed back to us. Do you have any questions before we end the call, Maya?
No, I don't.
All right, well, we are so glad you were able to join us today, and we appreciate you. And we look forward to working with you and your mom and your parents.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. All right, well, thank you, Dr. Murray. I'll be chatting with you later. You have a good one.
All right, thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye. All righty, I'm gonna stop recording.